Hi, this is your host Swapnil Bhartiya, and we are here at KubeCon in Detroit. And today we have with us once again Ayse Kaya, your head of analytics at Slim.ai. First of all, it's great to have you back on the show.
Yes, there's been 6 months. Last one was at Valencia in Spain. 6 months ago, yeah.
Yeah, and at Valencia, we started discussion about 3Ss, software supply chain security. You folks were working on a report about that. Before we talk about, and this year, not this year, at this KubeCon, you yesterday delivered a keynote where you talked about some of your findings. But before we go there, just let's talk quickly about the importance of software supply chain security so that we do understand why we are here, why we are talking about it.
Yes. So when we think about containers, we think about them as cells, these atomic units of living, like building blocks of living organisms, right? And we think of them as these units where the requests go in, data comes out, and everything that happens inside is simple. But the thing is, all of a sudden, we get something like Log4Shell happens, and before we know it, 2022 becomes the year of software supply chain security. And we become all very invested in understanding not only the principal components of our software systems and their contributors, but also their second-order effects, their dependency trees. So this year, we have an intense focus on software supply chain security because we had an awareness. We realized that these little atomic units may not be as innocent or simple. We might need a more sophisticated understanding of these atomic units, if you will.
Talk a bit about, you folks also work on reports to understand what's going on, then also not only learn from that, but also share with the rest of the world, hey, this is what is the state of security. So talk a bit about the latest report, and if you can also draw a comparison with the previous one, this is how you change things are happening.
In terms of data, at Slim.ai, we are scanning hundreds of thousands of containers regularly. This year alone, we have scanned more than 900,000 containers. So my research team deconstructs and observes these containers in an effort to understand what makes them developer-friendly and production-ready. So this report that we published, as you said, is a sequel to a previous report. And last year, what we did was we put a magnifying lens on the top publicly available containers on Docker Hub and published a report with analytical insights. And in this report, we had some shocking findings, very interesting findings. And I'm not going to go into all the details because I would like to speak about the delta, but I'll say this about that last report. We, as container experts and container enthusiasts, we were expecting to see some outliers in the data. Certain containers, container categories having a larger number of vulnerabilities, packages, libraries, licenses, special permissions. But it turned out that even the averages were surprisingly high. And one thing to note about these containers, these top public containers, is that, yes, there are millions of images out there. On Docker Hub alone, we have 10 million images with 318 billion pools. But the top 165 account for more than 30% of all pool volume. So this is a very specific cluster that we need to pay attention to because these containers are the most common starting points for most developers. So that was the baseline that we had, a very high number of vulnerabilities packages even last year. And then Log4Shell happened, and we started talking a lot more about supply chain security. So this is what we wanted to do. Like after an intense year of software supply chain security discussion, what happened to these containers that we were closely observing?
So even if this is the second report that you folks came out with, you have been in the industry for a long time, and also we have been seeing when it comes to these threats, what kind of pattern you are seeing that when these attacks happen, companies suddenly become very sensitive, very aware, they put a lot of budget and spending into that. Does that go down after that when things normalize, or it just keep stacking on top? So what I'm trying to understand from you that how companies are reacting and responding to that.
So these things never, so there's an asymmetrical war going on between hackers and these security teams. The things that we hear about usually are a subset of all the attacks. A lot of the companies, governments may not really like to talk about these things, share these things, as opposed to the other side, the hacker world, they seem to be very collaborative. And these things always increase in their sophistication, never really decrease. But they shift attention to different attack vectors, different penetration points. And there's always this war, sometimes we are not as aware, but security teams, whoever you speak to, they will be always paying attention, aware of these issues nonstop. But there are certain things, like an incident that's so big that affects everybody, that changes the attention span, that captures the attention of many other departments in a company, for example. Then the budgets, when they discuss budgets, they might be giving more to security. And there are these peaks that happen here and there. But I'm going to say that I don't think it is changing a lot. People are always aware of the security issues. Sometimes we speak less of these issues in the media, but in the companies, especially if they're seeing a lot of attacks in their environment, they're paying attention.
Culture, people, processes that you have in place also plays a very big role in improving the security posture. So can you also talk about, as we are seeing this, they're getting intensified, how companies are also reacting culturally, that they have processes in place that you folks can create as many technology solutions that you want. You can bring the horse to the lake, but you cannot make it drink. So talk a bit about the cultural aspect.
So I come from a cybersecurity background, and I have authored a lot of cybersecurity reports. Even the super admins may not be behaving as you think they are behaving. Like these admin accounts being shared, and the same admin account logging in from Morocco in the morning, France in the afternoon, China, and it's just normal because they are just sharing these super admin credentials. And from the hacker's standpoint, right, if you're a hacker, you think about not getting to the CEO or CFO right away. If you get to the super admin, then you can get to the entire company. So you would think that the humans are the weakest link. Our technology can be very good, but we need to make sure that our people understand the consequences of their actions. And it is changing, but one thing to note is that for a security team to secure their company, it requires a 360-degree view perspective. For a hacker team to get in, they need a single penetration point. So that is very asymmetrical, if you will. So there's always things, but they don't go for the most sophisticated thing. They usually go for the simple things. And if we care about these things first, there's that 80-20 rule. In this case, it might be a 99-1. But if you do the right things, then they might just go for the next company because they didn't do those simple steps. So I don't think that you can ever be 100% secure, but you can get to 80%, and that might be good enough for you.
Right, and security is, it's not a product, it's a process. You have to keep, improvising. Bad guys have to be right only once. You have to be right 101 times. So it's very complex, very complicated. Now, when we also talk about, as you're talking about, it's challenging, it's complicated. How are developers, DevOps team, DevSecOps team actually, what are they doing? How are they dealing with these challenges, security related?
So when we did our report, as I mentioned, we scanned more than 900,000 unique containers this year. So when we look into how the container is changing versus how the behavior is changing, there's a really interesting story that unfolds. So let me give you a few perspective shifting statistics. The first one is coming from the core data set that I was talking about, the top publicly available containers. About 60% of them have more vulnerabilities in them today than they did a year ago. 60%. And the rest of the containers didn't improve that much. And this is after that year of intense focus on software supply chain security. On the behavioral side, so we designed a global randomized survey asking questions to developers and DevOps engineers. 70% of the developers said their customers demand their containers to have zero vulnerabilities, zero, perfection, right? 88% said they find it more challenging to remove these vulnerabilities. So here is the story, right? Containers are getting more vulnerable, customers are demanding perfection more than ever, and developers are feeling the pressure. It's getting a lot harder for them. So you were asking about the behavioral aspect. So 88% said it's more challenging to remove these vulnerabilities. There seems to be a huge disconnect between executives and the frontline engineers. 50%, 49% of the executives that we asked this question said they harden and slim their containers in their companies. The people who do the actual work, the frontline, are reporting much lower numbers. So a lot of the developers, almost like the overwhelming majority of them said, I want to learn more about containers, especially the advanced stuff, the slimming, hardening. Only 1 in 4 developers said, they fully understand how securing a container works. But they have the right desire to learn. They don't have the right tool set and mindset yet in their organization. And executives have a much more optimistic view of the situation. So those are the behavioral dynamics that we are working with.
When we do talk about this cultural shift, which is more about, now DevOps, now DevSecOps, now this ops or that ops, versus the reality that is there is also a big gap in supply and demand of tech skills. Security is even more harder to find. So talk a bit about, once again, just continue this discussion, even in the report, if you felt that organizations, when they're dealing with it, when you look at the whole shift to platform engineers now, is this actually addressing the main problem at all? Or is simply like, let's create more labels, new names, new jargons?
Last time when we were talking about this, you were talking about how we created silos, and the entire idea was to unify things, and it is becoming a lot more siloed. Look, I do believe that people are trying to do their best, and everybody has the best intentions. Are we doing the right, are we taking a step back and looking at the system at large and doing the best actions possible? That's, we can argue that might not be the case. But what I'm seeing is that the problem is growing so fast. So one thing to give from the report, for example, yes, we are remediating vulnerabilities in the container set that we looked at. But we are detecting new incidents 4 times faster than our remediation rate. So we are working towards the goal, but the problem is growing at 4x rate, right? And the new ones that are added to the system, the new incidents, are mostly of high or critical categories. So new ones are added, and they're a lot more severe. So the teams are doing probably their best. They feel the pressure. They are in the heat of the battle. But the problem is so big, and it is moving so fast that we are always behind. And I'm a runner, right? If I don't know there's a finish line, that will kill me. Like, I can face a lot of adversity. I can be in the heat, in the cold. I can run long times. But I need to know that I can get ahead of the game. But developers, I don't think anyone in the company with this flow can feel that they are ahead of the game. And that is the main issue here. We don't have a sense of completion here. Like, not just like a surgeon can go into an operating room and finish and can look into the next thing. Developers always have this incompleteness, and they don't feel enough. And that is a big problem, I think.
Right. Yeah, I think the best analogy would also be, just to compound to your racing, the goalpost is continually changing. The moment you aim the ball, the goalpost has moved somewhere else. So it's like, and it drains on energy. People are burning out. So a lot of challenges are happening. But the fact is that no matter how complicated things are, folks like you do have to help them, right? So what are your recommendations? How they can approach it? So first of all, they need to understand a few, they do understand security is a process, it's not a product. It's, as you said, it's like cat and mouse game. You have to keep up with bad actors, whether it's status sponsored, whether it's commercial, they will always be poking holes in your wall no matter what. So you have to continuously, but you cannot lose your sleep every night, right? So talk a bit about what recommendation you have, so at least they can fortify a few things, so that at least, as you rightly said, if you do the right thing, you're still, much more relaxed than someone who has not done anything at all.
Look, I do not think complexity is the enemy here. Ignorance is. So there are times where we need to take a step back, and this is something that I mentioned in my keynote as well. And we need to enjoy the complex beauty, the poetic beauty of the complex systems around us. Kubernetes is one thing that we keep, joking about how complex it is, and I think it's marvelous. But then there are other times where we need to fearlessly step in and deconstruct and redesign dysfunctional parts. We can focus on the right things. In the containers case, for example, for us at Slim, we think you should only ship what's needed to production. You should know what's inside your container. And this cannot be done manually. In our survey, 50% of the developers said they do this with manual processes in their organizations. And we talked about the human error and human being the weakest link in the chain. So I am sure that if we had the right automated processes, if we do intelligent optimization, if we had the right tools and techniques, then developers, as you said, they don't want to have a PhD in infrastructure. They don't have to be security experts, which can be very specialized. But given the right tools and techniques, right, and also the opportunity to experiment and have fun beforehand, but when it is time to ship to production, optimize their containers, I think it would make it a lot easier and more secure. So you can give them the right tools and techniques. They can experiment and have fun and innovate. But when it's time to take everything, all these containers to production, they can Slim using the right tools. And that is going to give them the right mindset. They can go sleep more comfortably at night. And this is going to help the executives as well, because they will know that it is not just the humans, but the systems that build, that ensures that these attack surfaces never make it to production.
Because of the whole political scenario changing, the war going on, there's a lot of uncertainty. COVID has already created a lot of challenges. A lot of folks are looking at cost cutting. The companies want to be more cost effective. You have been talking, you have done this report. Have you also heard anything about where companies are looking at security, which might, face the axe, or you feel that security is one area that will not be chopped even cost cutting is going across? Number one. Number two is, let's just flip the coin and look at the work that you folks are doing. You're making things through automation, so cost effective that companies not only have to look at it as a cost cutting, but it makes them so cost effective that they can put those resources towards other things.
Beautiful. Actually, that question has the answer in and of itself. So customers, these interests, as I said, security is always a challenge, and the issues get more and more sophisticated, the attacks get more sophisticated. There are times where there's a huge incident that nobody in the company, not just the security team, but nobody can ignore it. There are other times where there are other priorities, but it only takes a new attack to get the attention into the right space. Now, in my survey that I mentioned, in the survey that we have done, 70% of the customers are saying that they want zero vulnerabilities. How realistic that is? I can give you a container with zero vulnerabilities today. 2 hours later, you might find 3 incidents in it, because we keep exploring these new things, and these new things are being added. It's like this living organism, changing all the time. So that's that snowball thing that you're always chasing. So for those types of things, again, automation, intelligent optimization is key. And those things usually bring a lot more than cost cutting, because you free up brilliant minds. Developers don't have to think about these things. They don't have to expect that call from the security team. They never want to speak to the security team if possible. So they dread that call. So if you can avoid all of those things, if they can ship the right things to the security teams, the DevOps teams, and these incidents are automatically being, like, they will be detected, don't get me wrong. There will always be new things. But because of the system that you build, they will be resolved continuously, and your teams are focusing on the right thing, the things that they like to do, the coding, right? So that actually makes sure that everybody is more psychologically safe, they enjoy what they are doing, and overall, obviously, that is going to have a very positive impact on the bottom line.
Ayse, thank you once again so much for taking your time out. I missed your keynote, but I'm pretty sure that it was once again incredible. But I got the opportunity to sit down with you and go into detail. So thanks for sharing those insights. Thanks for sharing those recommendations, and more importantly, talking about the cultural aspect and how the work that you folks are doing is, making things more cost effective so that they can allocate their resources, which is not just dollar amount, but also their, developer, gray cells in other projects. So thanks for sharing all those. And as usual, I would love to have you back on the show. Thank you.
Thank you, Swapnil. I believe the future is bright.